Greetings, jelly spoons, and welcome back to another episode of Monday Madness, the Monday show where we talk about utter madness and whatever has popped into my brain. As a bunch of you will have seen on my TikTok yesterday, I announced to you that today I am going to be doing one of those ranking videos that are so popular on this wonderful YouTube site. But what is it that I'm going to be ranking? Well, of course, you guys know me, my content, my channel, me, myself, and I, etc., etc. Of course, this year in particular, it is something to do with Peter Pan. So I'm going to take these 10 portrayals of Peter Pan as requested by you guys, and I'm going to rank them based on which one I think did the job best and which one I think did the job worst. And believe me when I say, I don't think the one I hate the most is going to be the one you all expect it to be. So before we get on with the ranking of the portrayals of Peter Pan, let me first give you a word from my wonderful sponsor. It's me, I am my own sponsor. As you may or may not know, this year I am embarking on a project. I am doing a 1-year movie project where I am going to make my own very low budget, low techie movie all about my favourite story and character, Peter Pan. It's going to be low budget and low techie, partly because it's me, I am low budget and low techie, and partly because with the Pandorama still happening, I don't want to get loads of different people involved and put them at risk by getting them all into the same place to film them. So it's predominantly going to be starring myself and filmed and edited and put together and everything built by myself with a couple of my wonderful friends who have agreed to send me various things that I'm going to insert into the video. If you guys would like to get involved, there is a myriad of different ways that you can do so. Number one, I'm looking for people to send me mermaid voices. I need some mermaids singing and echoing. It does not have to be pretty. So if you want to get involved in that, chuck me a DM on my Instagram or my TikTok, or you can chuck me a message down in the comments down below and I'll let you know how you can do that one. Also, if you'd like to support the project as a whole, I have Patreon and Ko-fi. And this year, anybody who supports me in any way on Ko-fi or Patreon is going to get a little creature designed after them. At some point during the year, I will send out a questionnaire to all of my wonderful supporters and backers, and you guys will get to tell me the different colors you want me to use, and I will create a little creature designed after what you tell me you would like, and that creature will go into the movie as a fairy, a gnome, that kind of thing, a little creature. I've already made some. If you are on my Patreon, you will have seen the first mock-up versions of the fairies. They're looking okay so far. I'm quite happy with them. So toddle over to my Patreon if you can support me monthly and you would like to do things like that. Also, if you support me on my Patreon, you can see the behind the scenes. You can help me to vote on things like last month, they chose the colour of the Neverbird's eyes while I was making the Neverbird puppet. Also, my Patreons at the very end of the year when I finished filming this movie, which is going to be released on December the 27th, I hope. The Patreons will get first dibs on some of the creatures and I will send those out to them so they can keep them and keep some of the magic of this movie alive. So if you'd like to come and support me on Patreon, you can do so. I'll put all the links down in the description and up on the screen somewhere. If you can't support me monthly, you can also join me on my Ko-fi page where you can chuck me support as and when you would like to. You also get to design your own creature if you back me on Ko-fi too. And of course on my Ko-fi page you can also find my commissions! If you would like to commission a personalised in-character message from Peter Pan, Mollymauk Tea Leaf, Kingsley Tea Leaf, Lucien the Nonagon, or Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream, you can find those commissions on my commissions page on my Ko-fi as well. I do lots of birthday parties. You can have them for yourself as a message or you can have it for somebody else, whatever you would like. Alright, self-plugging over and done with, let's get on with the video. Those are the ranking tiers. We have tier 1, top tier, got a crow. Tier number 2, not quite as good but still getting there, needs more fairy dust. Tier number 3, slap bang in the middle, slightly soiled. Tier number 4, getting into the worst of the worst, clapping will not save it. And then right at the bottom, tier number 5, bar the window, get out. Alright, so now we know the rankings. What movies, shows and adaptions am I going to be talking about based on you guys' comments? First up for discussion, we have the 2003 movie Peter Pan and the character of Peter Pan as portrayed by Jeremy Sumpter. When I looked into this movie, I think if my maths is right, then when he was playing Peter Pan, he was only 14 years old. So immediately props to Jeremy Sumpter because for a 14-year-old, this is a really, really good performance. I would like to talk about the costume here and just say this is one of my favorites. I would very happily wear this costume. I love it. I have loved it ever since I saw this movie back in 2003. Yes, I am old. It definitely harkens back to some of the descriptions of Peter Pan in the book. There are minimal descriptions, but it does say that he wears leaves and various things like that. It's a very natural costume. It definitely looks like something that comes from a Fey world or the Neverland. I really like this costume, 100% down with this. I also like the fact that Peter Pan doesn't wear shoes as well. Acting wise, this portrayal does really well. Jeremy manages to bring out all the joy and the expressions of Peter Pan. He can go from a happy smile to an ugh face. He does it really well. He's got some quite good comedy timing too. Peter Pan is quite a comedic character, particularly in the play as well. He absolutely nails the cockiness of Peter too. And you can see the sorrow too. Again, a really difficult feat for such a young actor. He manages to portray all these ranges of emotion and do them well. They all seem like part of the same consistent character, even though Peter Pan as a character is inconsistent in his own ways. Jeremy manages to portray all of this really, really well. Again, he was 14. I particularly enjoy the sword fighting as well. You can see how long he, and particularly Jason Isaacs, you can see how long they trained in order to be able to fight together. Whether they're up in the air or down on the land, you believe every second of it. I really, really love the fight scenes in this movie, and that portrayal of Peter being really nimble and great at swordplay. They clearly put in the time. Jeremy Sumpter is very, very good. The one flaw that I have found in Jeremy Sumpter's portrayal of Peter Pan, which has nothing to do with the scripting or anything, it might be how he was directed, but just how it comes across as a portrayal of the character, is it lacks the unearthliness of Peter Pan. I go on about this quite a lot. Peter Pan is not human. He escaped from being human when he was 7 days old. He's not human, he's not a bird, he's a betwixt and between. He's unearthly, he's almost fae-like. And so for me, that was what Jeremy Sumpter's portrayal was lacking in the 2003 movie. It was very good, it was a very moving and emotional and very enjoyable performance, but it was like watching the human boy Peter Pan, as opposed to the not human, not bird, unearthly, fae Peter Pan. And that's what I really want in my adaptions, particularly when you look at the source material. So, time for ranking then. For me, I'm going to put Jeremy Sumpter's portrayal of Peter Pan on tier number 2. Needs more fairy dust. It's a sprinkle, that's all that it needs. If we ignore the interestingly badly written script, that was nothing to do with the portrayal, that wasn't his fault, but it just needs a little bit more of the unearthly touch. Get out of the human Peter and into the unearthly, and then we'll be right there. So, Jeremy Sumpter's Peter Pan, tier number 2, needs more fairy dust. Moving along then onto the next Peter Pan on the list. This one is the 1991 movie Hook, starring Robin Williams as Peter Pan. Anybody who knows me at all, anyone who's watched any amount of my content, anyone who has ever spoken to me about it, you will already be aware of how I feel about the movie Hook. Hook isn't good, I'm sorry. There is no denying Robin Williams is an amazing actor. I have enjoyed him in many roles over the years. As a kid, I thought he was hilarious. I still think he's hilarious now. He is sorely missed by the entire world. That being said, I am not going to hold back on how I feel about him in this movie. Robin Williams is an amazing actor, but he should never have played this role because this role should never have existed in the first place. When you think of the character of Peter Pan, the reason that we all know him, and the first thing that probably comes to mind for most people, is Peter Pan, the boy who won't grow up. So for someone to take this character and go, but what if he did grow up, is both pointless and insulting. The character does not grow up. That's it, the end. You don't need anything else. And clearly, they had the budget, the time, and the resources to build a beautiful Neverland, so I will never understand why they didn't just do an amazing Peter Pan movie with the guy who played Rufio playing Peter Pan, because that guy deserves his own movie. The problem is that Robin Williams isn't playing Peter Pan here. He's playing Peter Banning, a reluctant, lawyery business guy who gets dragged to a fantasy land and spends most of his time making weird comedy quips about stuff and weird jokes and not taking it seriously and trying to get out and being a kind of crappy parent to his kids, and then has to try and rescue them from different scenarios, and by the end of the movie has supposedly come to his senses and become a much better father. I don't know. So yeah, most of the movie is spent not playing Peter Pan at all, so I am not going to do the original character the disservice of comparing the book and play Peter Pan to Mr. Banning, who is just nothing like him other than they both forget shit all the time. So instead, I will try to talk about the less than 20 minutes of screen time the Peter Pan in the movie Hook does have. The costume is okay. You can see where they've drawn elements from the original stage versions, but it's just really boringly done. It's this horrible washed out faded grey-green colour. Maybe that's supposed to be because he's grown up and it's to reflect the fact that he's now a sad adult. I don't know. If you didn't get to see it close up in the movie, you would never know that there were leaves on it. It just looks like a shapeless mass. It is not a costume I would want to wear or to recreate. I like Rufio's costume a lot better, and I like the character of Rufio a lot better. Speaking of character, alright, let's actually talk about it. Let's go. I won't try to deny that Robin Williams has a gleeful joy to him. It's there, it's a spark. I can see it. When he's dancing around and playing with the kids on the Neverland, you can see it. It's there, and I will give them that. There really isn't a lot to go on though here, because he just flies up into the air, turns into this really boring outfit, and then comes back with messy hair, plays basketball with some of the boys, sticks his nose in Tinkerbell's house. Tinkerbell kisses him and says she wants to be with him. He then talks about his kids and the fact that he wants to rescue his kids. So really and truly, the only good things I can say about Robin Williams' portrayal of Peter Pan here, and I will always put it in quotation marks because it's not Peter Pan, the only good thing I can say is that he has a joy to him and he plays well with the kids. But The rest of the time, he's talking about being a father and taking his kids home. All the hate here is not going towards Robin Williams, it's going towards the scriptwriters and whoever came up with this damned idea in the first place. So, Robin Williams' portrayal of Peter Pan in the movie Hook, simply for existing at all, I am afraid, has to go right down into tier number 5, bar the window. Next up then, we have a really popular request from all of my TikTok comments, and this is Robbie Kay's portrayal of Peter Pan in the TV series Once Upon a Time. Okay, so I went into watching this show fully aware that it was melodramatic as hell, not to be taken seriously. Everything was a huge big drama, and it was essentially played really big and over the top. I knew that going in, but I still wasn't quite prepared for how hammy it would be. I do appreciate what Once Upon a Time did with their Peter Pan, in that they showed the really dark and sinister side of him. And I did enjoy Robbie's portrayal of the dark side of Peter Pan. It was far too melodramatic for me personally, but it was within keeping of the tone of the show, so I'm not going to mark him down for that. However, what I will be marking them down for is the fact that while they went with the darker version of Peter Pan, that was all they went for. It was all one note. It never changed. It was all dark Peter Pan. Every word out of his mouth was like an evil villain monologue, and I swear to God he never lowered that one eyebrow. He did every scene like this with his eyebrow raised. And yeah, he was being cocky and arrogant, but it was all this one note of, I'm a villain, I'm bad, and look, isn't Captain Hook sexy? So while I enjoy the fact that it was this dark side of Peter Pan, I wanted to see more than just a caricature. So in terms of the portrayal, the acting was good for the melodrama that it was set in, but I can't really give it many points because it just, yeah, it fell flat for me. It was evil, which was fun, but that was it. Costume-wise, I don't mind it. It's a very interestingly built costume. I would wear it myself if it was changed slightly, mainly because it's too dark and boring. You can't see any of the details. They've clearly taken some inspiration from the stage shows, like they've got leaves on it and stuff, but you just can't see it. Even in the scenes where you're quite close up to him, unless he's in broad daylight, it's just so dark and almost grey that you can't make out any of the details, which is a real shame because I think it could be a really beautiful piece. I would want it to have different shades of green and pops of colour and stuff. I know they're going for this really dark and sinister vibe, but just because you're playing a dark and sinister character doesn't mean you have to have a one-note boring costume. I mean, look at any Disney villain in history, that'll tell you that. So yeah, Once Upon a Time's Peter Pan, it wasn't as awful as I was worried it was going to be, but it definitely needs some improvement. So the Once Upon a Time Peter Pan played by Robbie Kay, I'm going to put in tier number 3, slightly soiled, bang in the middle. It needs a lot of work, but it could do a lot worse. And now we have the first of the musical versions of Peter Pan, and this is the Peter Pan musical featuring Mary Martin. Mary Martin you may have seen in a DVD from the 1960s in Peter Pan. This was quite popular in the comments, so a lot of people seem to have seen this. Let's talk about Mary Martin and her portrayal of Peter Pan. This is another costume that I really like as well. I love the leaves and the flow of it. Mary Martin wears this costume really well. I like it. Mary Martin herself is in a near constant state of giggling while she's playing Peter Pan. She's always got this like smile or an almost smile on her face. The joy of Peter Pan is really evident all the way through her portrayal. She's definitely got that smile. She's always got this wonderful giggling attitude. It's really fun to watch. She also has a very intense stare, particularly in the nursery scene where she's talking to Wendy. It really puts me in mind of Jean Forbes Robertson's Peter Pan, but not enough people have heard of that, so I didn't put it on the list today. To paint a word picture though, it's a very unearthly stare. She's staring right through Wendy and just concentrating hard, and it's a little alarming to look at, but it definitely works. It fits the character 100%. The one major flaw that I found in Mary Martin's Peter Pan as I was watching the whole show is that, a bit like the Once Upon a Time Peter Pan, it feels just a tiny bit one note. Whereas the Once Upon a Time Peter Pan was one note evil and dark, this is kind of one note in its joyfulness. Now, there's nothing wrong with the joy of Peter Pan, so I'm not going to mark it down too much for that, but overall, he is more than just joy. He's got cockiness and arrogance and different things that happen to him. He's got some sorrow, and that is difficult in the Mary Martin portrayal because she is so good at being this joyful character, and you can see how much she's enjoying it. It kind of shows through, even in the sadder moments when Wendy's abandoning Peter Pan or when Tinkerbell's dying. Mary Martin still somehow manages to look like she's almost full of glee. And while that is overall very in keeping with the character of Peter Pan, particularly in those moments with Tinkerbell, he is actually feeling that sad hurt, and he is actually worried and concerned about her. So Mary Martin's portrayal of Peter Pan in the musical, I will be putting in needs more fairy dust, tier number 2. Sticking with the musical for the 5th version of Peter Pan, I'm talking about the same musical, but a few years later it's been adapted and changed a little bit, and the person playing Peter Pan this time is Cathy Rigby. A lot of you seem to have heard of her, and I love that you have. I will keep this short and sweet. I have talked about Cathy Rigby a lot. She is an ex-gymnast. Her flying is untouchable. It is superb. You will never get another Peter Pan that is as good as Cathy Rigby when she is flying. She's doing flips through the air, and she keeps her gymnastic nature when she's on the ground as well. Her Peter Pan is constantly moving, going from one place to the other. She's doing flips and turns while she's singing, while she's talking. She's always half paying attention to one thing, having a conversation, looking and thinking at other things, and doing various things all over the stage as well. Not only does she utilize her amazing gymnastic background in the air and to do flips and things, she can also bloody well act. Every single thing that Peter Pan does and feels, she can do it. His joy, his rapture, his eternal youth, his bouncing around, she does that. But she can also do his quiet, sad, somber moments where you can see every feeling reflected in his face. You can see that he is just pretending to be stoic when Wendy and the boys leave. You can feel how utterly devastated he is at the idea that Tinkerbell might be dying. You can see it all in the face of Cathy Rigby. She can do absolutely no wrong for me. Absolutely tip-top, 100%. No one will be surprised when I say Cathy Rigby's Peter Pan got a crow. Absolutely 100% going in top tier. Number 1, Cathy Rigby. I believe her. She is Peter Pan. No one can topple her. And now we come to another really popular one that people asked for a lot in my comments. I promise you I am going to do a full video talking about this movie, but for now I am just going to talk about the portrayal of Peter Pan. This is of course the Walt Disney 1953 movie of Peter Pan. In the Disney movie, Peter Pan is of course animated, but the animators took a lot of references from the voice actor, Bobby Driscoll. Sorry if I have mispronounced that name, but Bobby did do quite a lot of the actions and stuff, so he is in there even though it's a cartoon. Alright, let's talk about it. The real benefit that animation has over any other form of media is that you can make your character do literally anything that you want. So I have to admit, the expressions on the Disney Peter Pan's face, the way he flies, the way he moves, the way he holds himself and darts all over the place, that's all really good. Voice acting wise, Bobby does really good in his portrayal of Peter Pan. Quick note on the costume, I really don't like the Disney version of Peter Pan's costume. It is far too simplistic for me, it's just basic. It's a green tunic that anyone could wear and a hat with a feather in it. It's not very inspired or exciting, there's no embellishments, there's nothing at all. I appreciate that a lot of this was probably for the ease of animating, so while I can understand the reasoning behind it, it doesn't mean I have to like the finished product. So yeah, the costume gets a big downvote for me. It really is something of nothing. It's very, very dull. Portrayal wise though, as I say, Bobby did do a really good job on the voice. The problem he had was the script he was given. The way this character was written was really bad and it's not Peter Pan at all. Some of the banter that he has with the Lost Boys and Captain Hook is there. A little bit of the chaotic forgetfulness is there too in brief moments, which Bobby does manage to translate through his vocal performances. But my main issue with the Peter Pan of this movie is that he's just downright rude. Yes, the Peter Pan in the play and the novel wasn't always kind. He was careless, heartless, often selfish and things, but he was never rude, especially to Wendy. I can never get over that moment right at the beginning where he's going, "Get on with it, girl," and Wendy's enough. That's not Peter Pan at all. So while I give Bobby some major props because he clearly did a decent job with this character, the character he was given was, not that great. So the Disney version of Peter Pan is going in. Clapping won't save it. This portrayal of Peter Pan comes from the 2004 movie Finding Neverland, which starred Johnny Depp. It's mostly about the life of J.M. Barrie, and while they get some of their history a little bit muddled up and wrong, I'm not really going to talk about that very much. I want to talk about the portrayal of Peter Pan. This portrayal of Peter Pan comes from the actor Kelly Macdonald, and technically, Kelly is actually playing the actor Nina Buseku. Sorry if I butchered that name as well. Nina played the first ever Peter Pan, so technically Kelly is playing Nina playing Peter Pan. For the sake of making this whole video easier, I'll just say Kelly playing Peter Pan. The costume they made that Kelly wears is an almost exact replica of the one that Nina would have worn back in the stage play in 1904. You can see this in the details of the leaves they put around the shoulders, the colours that they used, the lace-up sleeves. It's all absolutely beautiful. I 100% want a copy of this costume. They did embellish it a little bit. They added some gold details down the front, probably to make it more interesting for a cinematic audience, so I don't really mind those embellishments. Overall, it looks absolutely stunning, and major points for accuracy, not only to the novel, but to the original stage play as well. Within the movie of Finding Neverland, the portrayal of Peter that we see is like a play within a play, but we do get to see a decent chunk of it. We get to see almost the entire nursery scene where Peter Pan is talking to Wendy and her brothers and convinces them to fly out of the window. We get to see that terrible moment where Peter calls out to the audience, begging them to help him save Tinkerbell. Say quick that you believe. If you believe, clap your hands. And of course, everyone claps. And Tinkerbell is saved. It's a beautiful moment that really shows a different aspect of Peter's character. We get to see that. It's a really good portrayal by Kelly. So, Kelly Macdonald playing Nina, playing Peter Pan in Finding Neverland, is going to go straight into tier number 2. Needs more fairy dust. Just a small sprinkle, and it's mostly the fact that we don't get to see enough of her. I want to see more of this portrayal of Peter. I think it's really great. So yeah, I'm happy to put it up there, just underneath Cathy Rigby. Next up, we have Peter Pan Goes Wrong, a utterly fantastic disaster of a play. The version of it that I first saw was the 2020 BBC version where they filmed it and put it on TV. Peter Pan was played by an actor in this version called Greg Tannahill, and technically Greg is playing the actor Jonathan, who is playing Peter Pan. Bear with me. So if I accidentally say Jonathan instead of Greg, please forgive me. Now technically I could talk about 3 different people here because the role of Peter Pan as this play is going so horribly wrong is technically played by 3 people. First he's played by Jonathan, then he's played by stage manager Trevor, and then he's played by Max. But overall he is predominantly played by Jonathan, who is played by Greg, so Greg/Jonathan is the main one I'm going to talk about. First off, the costume is really cool. It's definitely a modern take on Peter Pan's costume, but I really like it. The decorations of leaves going all the way down the trousers, I really like that, I'm here for it. And the top that he wears, which is all stripy and patchwork, I really want someone to make that as a jumper because I would buy the shit out of that. I would like a long sleeve version of that jumper, please. Greg as Jonathan certainly plays the ignorant naiveness of Peter Pan very, very well. And he definitely has the cockiness down as well. Now, the flying itself actually is meant to go wrong through the whole show. At no point do we actually see anybody flying up on the harness in a way that looks remotely safe. But I'll actually give them props for this because although the flying doesn't look good, the fact that they are so capable on the harnesses that they can make it look like things are going horribly wrong while staying safe and doing it in a hilarious manner, I think is very, very good. So it's not Cathy Rigby flying and bounding all over the place, but nonetheless, it is very technically well executed. So points for flying go to Greg as well. Also to stage manager Trevor, because my god, that man has to dangle upside down on wires and get lifted off stage. That takes some doing. Greg as Jonathan as Peter is definitely expressive. You can see everything in his face, definitely a stage actor. You can see it all very well done there, particularly as they're filming the stage show, you can see every expression on the face. Sadly, the only sides of his Peter that we really get to see are the cockiness and the arrogance and the sort of youthful joy. It's all very good, but we don't get to see the other side to him because in the moments where Tinkerbell is dying and Wendy is leaving, he's either being played by a different actor at the time or he's being played as Jonathan. Overall, this show, Peter Pan Goes Wrong, is bloody hilarious. I totally recommend it. I think it's available on YouTube somewhere. If not, you can get it on Amazon. Please pay for it. It is so worth watching. I promise I am not sponsored by these people. I wish that I was. I cannot big up this show enough. Adaptation-wise, it sticks very, very loosely to the source material, but the portrayal of Peter Pan is not bad at all. So the Peter Pan Goes Wrong, played by Greg/Jonathan/ the stage manager/ Max, I will put into tier number 3, bang in the middle, slightly soiled. There's nothing really wrong with it, but as a portrayal of Peter Pan, because so much is going wrong, we never really get to see the character portrayed particularly. So I'm not going to judge it too harshly because it is so funny, but also I am going to judge it a little bit harshly because there's just not enough to judge it on. So yeah, bang in the middle. I don't hate it. I absolutely love the show, but as a portrayal of Peter, there's just not enough to go on. This adaptation is one that you guys have talked about quite a lot in the comments as well, and it is the 2015, I believe, movie Pan, which is a self-proclaimed prequel to Peter Pan. And in this adaptation, Peter Pan is played by Levi Miller. I only watched the movie Pan about 3 days ago now. And I watched it and took loads of notes because I was actually originally going to make this Monday Madness video my review of the movie Pan. A lot of people had mentioned it in my comments and I hadn't actually watched it before and I thought, may as well could do a review of it. If you would still like to see my review of the movie Pan, just drop me a comment down below letting me know that you want to see that because I've got all the notes, I can turn it into a review if you want. The main reason I decided to do this instead was because honestly, I didn't have that much to say about the movie Pan in the end. Essentially, it's not a Peter Pan movie, and it got to a certain point where it felt both pointless and frustrating to even try to review it as a Peter Pan critic because there was just so much both wrong and missing that it was like they were just doing their own thing and using some of the same names, which got more frustrating when they changed things around. So yeah, overall, not a big fan of this movie. Levi Miller, however, bless him, does a really good job with the character that he's been given. The problem is this character is not Peter Pan. This character essentially is Oliver Twist combined with Pip from Great Expectations. Mush those two together and that is who he was playing. This Peter Pan was just so goody two shoes. It wasn't the same character at all. It was one of those in name only kind of things. So yeah, and they also made Captain Hook a cowboy, which was just weird. Like, Captain Hook was speaking like Dean Winchester, and that is not as cool as you might think it is. There's also no costume for me to critique because he's basically wearing an undershirt and trousers the whole way through. He looks like he's come straight out of, you know, an orphanage in Charles Dickens times. So yeah, at one point he does wear a weird sort of variation on a hat. Can't really comment on that very much. So yeah, Levi Miller and the Pan movie version of Peter Pan, I am very sorry, but I have to put you at tier number 4. Clapping won't save it. It's a fine performance for whatever the fuck that script was, but it ain't Peter Pan. This is another one a lot of you mentioned in comments on various videos as well, so it's in the mix, and this is Peter Pan Live. This aired on NBC in America in, I think, 2014. I think it came to the UK a little bit later than that. At some point it was on TV, I'm pretty sure, and I've been able to watch it on YouTube and various other platforms. It's been on my review list for a little while because people have been mentioning it in the comments. I hadn't got round to it yet. I did only watch this one this week along with the movie Pan. So, let's talk about it. Peter Pan Live is also based on the musical that the Cathy Rigby version and the Mary Martin musical was, again with some adaptations and changes here and there for the updated audience. Fun fact about this, Christopher Walken is in it playing Captain Hook, which was unexpectedly hilarious, and also Emmett, I can't remember his actor name, but I know him as Emmett from Legally Blonde the musical. He is in this playing the dual role of Smee and Mr. Darling, which is an interesting choice, but nonetheless, he is absolutely delightful and I love him in this, so yay, go Emmett. The actor playing Peter in this was called Allison Williams, and now let's get on with the ranking. It's not often that I ever say the phrase, I could have done that better. Especially not with 100% certainty in myself. This is partly because I firmly believe that putting someone else down does not make you any better, and Mean Girls taught us that. I also know that no matter whether I personally agree with a choice that an actor has made, whatever role they're playing at the time, I can still usually immerse myself and enjoy the show that they're in, even if I personally wouldn't have done it that way. So really, I never have found myself saying, I could have done that better. There are roles that I look at and go, I would love to play that. Like I've always said, I would love to play Peter Pan again and fly and do it properly. But after watching Peter Pan Live, I can honestly say with 100% certainty, I could have played Peter Pan better than Allison Williams. Let me explain. The first clip that I ever saw of Peter Pan Live was on a YouTube channel that I think is called The Show Must Go On. It shows you clips of various different musicals and theatre and stuff. And the first clip of Peter Pan Live that I saw on that channel was from the song I Won't Grow Up, which is one of my favourite songs from the entire show. Unfortunately though, when I watched that clip, I was left really disappointed. The way Peter Pan Live had set up their version of I Won't Grow Up was with Peter and Wendy at opposite ends of the table and all the Lost Boys in the middle. The song itself is a really lively, upbeat number where Peter is countering everything that Wendy and various people are saying I won't grow up, and getting all the Lost Boys to join in with him. Not a penny will I pinch, I'll never grow a mustache, I'm never gonna be this, I'm never, and all of this really high energy stuff, and it builds and builds and builds. None of that was there. Now the Lost Boys were doing it, they were giving it their all. Wendy, bless her, the way Wendy was portrayed in this was genuinely awful, but the actress was doing such a good job with it. Even though the character was wrong, the portrayal was great. Allison's version of Peter Pan? It was bad. Really bad. There was no enthusiasm, there was no joy, there wasn't even any evilness or cockiness, there was nothing. She looked as if she didn't want to be there. At one point, Peter jumps up onto the table to start singing a bit of the song. Sorry, I said Peter jumps up onto the table. That would imply enthusiasm. No. What Allison did was step onto the table and kneel down. In fact, me describing it to you was probably more exciting than it looked in the show. How am I supposed to judge this character when you're giving me nothing? I will say Peter Pan's costume, much like the scenery, I really love. I would happily wear that Peter Pan costume. It's got cool bits of netting, it's vibrant and bright, it looks like it's got bits of fake leather on it as well. Absolutely love the costume. Not the person in it, however. Dear God. But I finished watching the clip and I thought, okay, maybe it's a fluke. Maybe there was some weird directing going on in that scene. Maybe it was just a last minute addition. Maybe something happened. It's a live show, obviously filmed it live. Maybe something happened and it was a fluke. Okay, so I then went and watched the whole show. Peter Pan live. I actually bought it so I could watch the whole thing and keep watching it back while I took notes. Within about a minute of Allison's first entrance as Peter Pan, I knew it wasn't a fluke. This is how she's portraying Peter Pan. That moment that really sealed it for me was when Peter and Wendy were talking just before she puts his shadow on. And honestly, there were several moments where I was looking at Allison and I could see that all she was thinking was, Wendy's gonna say her line, this is what I say next. She was not in the moment, she was not in character, if she ever was at all. It's just complete blank, expressionless nothing. And then Wendy says a line and she says hers back. And this carries on through the whole show. There is so much to choose from when portraying Peter Pan. Now, I know most people are probably not going to know this character as well as me. Hint, hint, that's why I should be playing him. But they can at least pick something. It's blank, it's expressionless, there's no character. There's no drive, there's no energy, there's just nothing. So genuinely, I want to know how terrible all the other auditions were for her to get this role in the first place. So, Allison Williams' portrayal of Peter Pan, as you can probably guess from Peter Pan Live, is going to be ranked tier number 5, bar the window. I genuinely can't believe this portrayal of Peter Pan was allowed to be aired at all. And on that cheerful note, that is the end of this week's Monday Madness. Let me know down in the comments below, did you agree with any of my picks? Where would you have ranked them on my wonderful rank board? Would you have thought of better names for the different rank tiers? I nearly called tier 1 Pantastic, but I decided not to. I'm sorry. If there's any adaptations you would like me to talk about in another review, if there are any portrayals of Peter Pan you would like me to do another ranking on, if there's anything you would like to know about the story, etc, etc, chuck them down in the comments below. If there's anything else you would like me to talk about in my non-Peter Pan related content, let me know down in the comments below as well. And tell me what you guys have been doing. I love you telling me what you're up to. What have you been doing this week? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, if you would like to support me in my craziness or my Peter Pan Never Never movie project for the year 2022, you can chuck me support on Ko-fi or my Patreon as well. Have a wonderful week, my wonderful jelly spoons. I will see you very, very soon. Goodbye. How can you not enjoy playing Peter Pan? If you're not going to enjoy it, give it to me! I'll fly halfway across the world just to play Peter Pan. I will enjoy it. Hell, I will learn the entire script in German just so I can play Peter Pan on a stage. I will learn it in fucking Chinese. I will learn it and go to Australia. I will literally move heaven and earth to be able to play this character. And I am so, so mad that you were given this opportunity and you did nothing with it. And it's not even that untouchable etherealness, because you know what? Jean Forbes Robertson did that and she was still believable and it still had character and depth. I'm sure she's lovely. I'm sure Allison Williams is a fucking lovely person. I'm sure she's a lovely person. But it's like Robin Williams all over again. You're a lovely person, I'm sure you're a great actor, but you should never have been playing this part and I've got no idea how you ended up playing it in the first place. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. I'm mad on behalf of myself because I'm not an arrogant or cocky person. I do not think I'm a better actor than anyone else out there, but I know I could kill it as Peter Pan. And it really upsets me when people just don't bother. Oh, Jesus Christ. Anyway. Oh, right, I'm gonna go and write some more Peter Pan facts. I'm nearly at 100. Might do a live or something for my Peter Pan facts. Alright. I'm gonna go and watch Cathy, Rigby, and cuddle the dog. Okay, let's do that. It's a stupid joke, but I love it. People clap their hands, they better fucking clap their hands. Clap, you better be clapping your hands right now. Thank you. I'm gonna go and finish writing my essay about Peter Pan. Fucking Christ. I won't grow up. 'Cause growing up is awfuler than all the awful things that ever were. I'll never grow up, never grow up, never grow up. No, sir.